Yes, thank you for joining us for another episode of Family Case Files. I'm your host, V, and today I have James Starr Johnson co-hosting with me, and we have our guest legal advisor, James Kelly, and our guest is Erica Thomas. So, Jamie, if you could introduce our guest situation, we can start there.
I've read it over, but the files got to me very late, and so I don't want to quote because you guys gave me two different ones, and I don't want to get mixed up. I mean, I know the situation where they came in on an ex parte, and that it was much later, and then they removed the children at that point. And it's,
well, then, Erica, we'll let you tell us why you're on the show.
Okay, well, I'm on the show because because of CPS. I'm on the show. My oldest, he is 5 right now. He was born on August 6, 2014. He's the most precious child I could ever imagine, and I'm really pissed off at CPS right now. It's unbelievable what they did to me. I'll just keep in mind, I'm also a former foster child as well, on top of what they did to me. Just keep that in mind. And then, so my son was removed in 2016 due to domestic violence. His dad came out dirty for drugs. I passed every single test. By August of 2016, I had pretty much all my services done, except for the therapy session, obviously, because you have to continue therapy until pretty much the case is over with. In October of 2016, they want to do mediation with me because the goal was reunification, but then they wanted to terminate my rights. I think the only reason why they wanted to terminate my rights is because during my case, this was not expected of me. I found out I was pregnant with my youngest, who is right here. And so he's a pride and joy of me too. I went into mediation. I was pregnant. I was about maybe 5, 6, 7 months pregnant. I was big. I was not small. I was big. And they had my court-appointed attorney to come out in the waiting room. My son's father was not even in the waiting room. She sat down.
Looks like
oh, no. Yes, we did.
She says she's come from foster situation. It's just the system is a gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
Absolutely, and we have these everywhere.
My brother was also in foster care. So my oldest is with my brother, which I don't like that idea either, just because of the fact that that's my kid, regardless of the situation.
What was the initial situation? What was the initial complaint?
It was domestic violence, she said, which is a common target.
James, do you? I mean, Jamie, you posed a good question there. Does it really matter? Does it matter, Mr. Kelly? In these situations, the court they see a situation of domestic violence. If they remove the source of the violence, let's say she had a child and a spouse, the spouse was violent towards her, the spouse is removed from the situation, is it still just likely if she were the one perpetrating the violence and removed from the situation that the children would be taken?
Frequently they are, and I think it's done incorrectly many times, because one of the things that they don't do, that they're not trained in, is to understand and analyze covert domestic violence. They'll only look at the overt, where, oh gee, there was a threat, and generally it's slated in one direction. There was somebody that had reached out to me and asked me, who happened to be a male, for a domestic violence center that he could recommend for him and his children. He feared for his life. That was a 14-hour drive. And that's not something that's equal in this for men and women. So there are some significant disparities with how the system treats the genders. And I find
Yes,
that
there is.
unfortunate. The Saunders study for the U.S. Department of Justice, prepared in 2012, cites the American Judges Association on page 17 is recognizing that in 70% of the contested divorces, custody is awarded to the most abusive parent initially,
Yes.
not the least abusive.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that's clearly a bias.
Let me try to say it better because maybe I need to tell y'all what state I'm from, if that helps too, because CPS is all around the world. Okay, so I'm in the state of Texas. I currently live here in San Antonio, Texas. Jamie, I'm pretty sure you are aware of Michael Cadena and his daughter. That's how I know you, because you worked with him before. And it's amazing on what I've seen, what he's done too. That's a story in itself. But my case was out in Wilson County.
Oh, no, not Wilson County. I'm from Austin.
You're from Austin?
I'm from Austin, Texas. Yes, Wilson County. Yeah. At least it wasn't at Travis County.
Okay, well, that's where my case was out with my oldest. Like I said, they removed him in 2016 for his dad using drugs. I never did any drugs, but there's also domestic violence in the home. I was going to tell y'all that the very first court hearing that we had, actually my son's father went to jail because he had, I guess, the warrant out for his arrest already, so he showed up to jail. That was like my biggest opportunity to leave that relationship completely, and that's what I did. So from the very first case that I had for CPS, I left. I packed my stuff, and not just that, I packed my oldest son's stuff too, because I knew what I was gonna do. I was gonna fight this hardcore to the max because, like I said, I grew up in foster care myself, and so I know how the foster system works in a way. And I didn't like growing up in foster care. I'm gonna tell you that much. But let me finish what I was gonna say. So in June of 2016, I found out I was pregnant with my youngest. In January of 17, I gave birth in Kerrville, Texas. Okay. The reason why is I felt, okay, CPS was trying to use my formal foster care status big time to try to take my kids. So the kids are by different dads. They're not the same dad. Kerrville stepped in when my son's born. They came like 2 days after he was born, and their words were, "We're not taking your youngest from you." My eyes was like, what? They said the reason why they're not going to take my youngest from me is because I wasn't in the relationship with my oldest son's father anymore, and that they felt that I should have had my oldest back. Okay. Everything that I did was for my oldest, and to this very day, I'm still pissed about it. That court-appointed attorney that I had, I kid you not, I found out I busted her. She used to be a CPS worker for the state of Texas before she was a CPS, before she was an attorney. So I felt like that was a conflict of interest, and y'all probably know more about that with that. But I basically gave custody to my brother, not knowing that CPS actually did file a monitored return on my oldest, which I never got. And I know what a monitored return is and how that works.
Mr. Kelly, do you know more about that? That's the first time I've heard that terminology.
I know Texas is a particularly difficult area, especially in that area.
I can agree with you there. Wilson County was the first federal county to be made official in Texas. And you want to talk about conviction rates? Don't get caught up in the court system in Wilson County. You will not win. They're all about conviction rating. They don't care how much they want to plea bargain with you, as long as they have their conviction rating, as long as they're successful in every court case and do whatever they want to do, then that's. And now, don't get me wrong, Wilson County, Austin, beautiful place. You just don't want to get any legal trouble. You get railroaded.
It also turns out Wilson County is a very small town. Everybody knows everybody there, so go figures, right?
Well, I was going to say, you and I might be related.
I don't know that, but it's possible.
Well, the Thomases are my people.
It's just crazy because how small it is. But what amazed me after that case was closed, I kid you not, after I gave custody to my brother, CPS wasn't completely gone away from me yet because of my youngest. But like I said, I don't know if y'all got copies of the final orders or whatnot, but those final orders were set in June. CPS did not leave until October of that same year. But I kid you not, that same year in October, this is what CPS told me, okay? How do you feel about getting your oldest back? Now I'm stuck in a bind because my son's over there. I have rights to my oldest still. My brother's going to fight this thing to the hardcore max because he thinks CPS was right. But at the end of the day, that's my child he has.
Well, Mr. Kelly, what do you think about the situation?
Well, I think that too many parental rights are being stripped across the country. And unless there's clear and convincing evidence that she poses a danger to the child, there's no reason for that child not to be in her custody. And that's Santosky v. Kramer, 1981 Supreme Court decision. It came out of New York initially. And so many people will make up stuff and play with the different levels of evidence. It's not a preponderance, it's clear and convincing. And so far, I haven't heard anything that's clear and convincing that says you shouldn't have your child back.
My question is this: when you're talking about clear, convincing evidence, can you kind of describe that in a little bit more detail? Is it like going from, if I was to hurt my child, a parent who hurts their kids will most likely go to jail correctly? Is that clear, convincing evidence?
It would be that you were probably going to hurt them. Not
Okay.
that you might, but that you probably would. And that's the simplest way I can describe it.
I said, so guilty before proven innocent, so to speak?
You do have that to a certain degree, and there is a necessity for that to some degree, because there are some parents that are just beyond anything that is in any sense of normal. For instance, since we're talking about Texas, let's talk about Christy Sheets. Christy Sheets had some issues a few years back with her husband. She had some mental health issues, and she wanted to hurt the husband. So she killed her two daughters. So that's something that nobody saw coming. But there were signs and symptoms for that in advance. So in something like that, if you understand the signs and symptoms, you can say, yes, there's probably going to be a danger to the child. That's not something I'm seeing here.
And you know what's strange? For somebody who grew up in foster care and had a hard life in that foster care system, I love my kids to death, and I would give them the world if I could. I'm not going to sit there and say I'm going to hurt them, because I'm not. I believe, I believe in God. I don't know if y'all do too, but I have a strong faith in God, and I believe that God gave me those children for a reason. And I love being a mom. I would not change it for the world. I love getting up every day and seeing a happy smile on my son's face, and that's how it was with my oldest too.
Well, now, can you specify what the obstacle here is? What is stopping you from having all of your children right now at this very moment? What is the court requiring of you?
I did everything. Actually, I just have to go and modify the order. And what's going on with that is I feel like the current order is affecting the suit of the child relationship, because there's times where I've gone to see my son and my brother has canceled on me. And I have cops on his butt now because I'm not going to let that slide. And I have a feeling it's my brother.
And can you describe how your brother acts around your oldest when you're present?
That I'm not sure, because my visits right now are supervised at KidShare. I don't have that interaction with my brother, because me and my brother have never gotten along. And I felt like it was in the best interest for me to just have my visits with my son and not have my brother around.
Your brother, he's never been molested or anything growing up that you know of, correct?
That I do not know of. What happened with me, with my case on my mom basically, she signed her rights away freely, voluntarily, and my dad didn't. My dad was close to getting custody of me, like I'm serious, so close that my bio mom flipped out and told the state of Texas that I was molested. But it also turns out when I was in foster care, when I turned 17 years old, I went to a doctor's office and they checked down there and I was never molested. So basically the state of Texas has me being molested on live.
Molesters sometimes turn out, the molested turn out to be molesters, excuse me. Especially if it's very prevalent in males. Now, if there are some issues going on here with your brother, you might want to be careful. Now, I'm not saying that your brother is anything, but it's just the potential situation, because these people don't like to give custody of children to the better family member. So if you're calling cops on him and doing things like this, there's turmoil, and this turmoil gets watched. Okay, you have these DPS workers. Some of them do an extraordinary job to the point of being covert ops agents. If they see that you have something going on, if you've got conflict with someone, they're going to look into that conflict. They're going to see and make a judgment who's right, and then they'll lean and fake evidence or exaggerate evidence towards one side and not the other, and it becomes a mess.
Only reason why I'm calling the cops is because it is court ordered that I'm allowed to have my visitation, and my brother wants to cancel on me. So as a mother who loved her children very much and whose rights weren't terminated, because CPS couldn't terminate on them because I have my youngest, it's not fair to my youngest that he can't have those visits. What my brother wants to do is technically he wants to sneak off with my youngest son's father and allow that to have visits and screw me, basically.
Erica, if you don't mind, can you tell me a little bit more about the relationship you have with your brother?
Well, it turns out my brother was in foster care. Okay. We saw each other sometimes while we were in foster care, but not all the time. It turns out that before I was pregnant, my brother was living with our biological mother, and at that given moment, he was doing drugs. He was smoking weed. I don't know if he's doing it now, but he was smoking weed around in my mother's house. I never was. There was times where people told me that my brother was jealous of me, and I don't know what reason. Me and my relationship with my brother hasn't been the best. I've tried to have a relationship with him. In fact, it turns out when my oldest was born, like 2 hours at the hospital with my oldest, when he was born, my brother brought up CPS at the hospital. And there was times where I wanted to kick him out because he brought up that statement. And I felt like from that point forward, I was cursed with this whole CPS situation.
Tell me a little bit about why he brought up CPS.
I think it was because of my son's father, my oldest son's father, but I think he also brought it up because of our history of being in foster care.
Hello there. This is Lyra Jubb, and I would like to introduce you to two organizations I was instrumental in creating while enduring the harrowing experience of losing my children to the terroristic and broken system commonly known as CPS in the family court process. After losing my parental rights, I began seeking any assistance possible. The problem was that for as many people who have been going through a similar crisis as myself, there was no clear understanding of how to proceed after parents entered into the family court system. There were advocates willing to help, but different advocates had different information due to the confusion of the family court process. Their efforts were largely unfruitful as a result of this confusion, and many advocates were becoming overloaded with the barrage of parents in crisis. Over the past 3 years, I have been working with others to develop these two organizations and the websites to assist in dealing with this systematic failure. The Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families was founded in March of 2016. Our vision was to help families remain whole and to support families that have been separated work towards reunification. To find and combine groups and advocates who share this vision and want to help. We are here to assist in a wide range of family and community support programs. Our mission is to find and offer support, counseling, and advocacy for parents involved with family court, DCFS, CPS, related child custody matters, or any family-related matters. We aim to bring clarity, knowledge, understanding, education, and application to the people. We want to be providing the cutting-edge standards and abilities. We have advocates available to assist in pro se representation and provide on-call assistance on our sites and in the social network. We also lobby for laws to protect family values and reunification of families. We meet with federal, state, and local government officials and lobby for equal treatment of parents in the eyes of the law. We are dedicated to supporting parents and families with education, counseling, and nonviolent solution-based advocacy. The Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families is a faith-based nonprofit, and we do accept donations, and we have lots of outreach programs that we are pursuing at this time. If you would like to get involved, please visit our site at www.coalition4, that's the number 4, protection.com, and sign up with our parent advocate registration form.
We're back from commercial break here. I know the show has been a little bumpy. Miss Jane Starr is having a little bit of technical difficulties. She's not exactly where she is normal for filming, but we're here, and not quite sure we left off. I think, Mr. Kelly, you had something that you were trying to get at.
I had a thought, and I know you had a valid point on what you were proposing about perhaps molestation and that sort of thing may have been an issue. But one of the other things that I've studied fairly closely is something called identification of aggressors. And there's certainly a bit of a power and control issue between Erica and her brother over the child, and probably much beyond before that her oldest was born. So I'm wondering about what kind of dynamic is going on there, and if there's a bit of a dynamic where he's instilling anxiety in the child around her. That's a little bit concerning to me. So Erica, when you're unsupervised visitation, how does your son respond to you?
There's times where I go to my visit and my son tells me he hates me. There's times where I have my visit and he's ready to leave. There's times where I've seen him cry. There's this one incident. Okay, so my brother has a girlfriend. They live together. They're not technically by law, they're not married, but they're living together. So they're not even like they're not like married on paper or anything like that. They are just shacking up and acting like husband and wife. The girlfriend, she can't have kids, so she's not able to have kids of her own. My oldest is 5 years old. He is very smart. Before CPS took him, he started talking and learning the ABCs and all this stuff, and he's very a bright child for a 5-year-old. And what scares me is it could be that they're telling him things before he comes and sees me. I have a feeling that they're scared that they're gonna have to give up my baby.
And
I actually speak to a lot of victims too, and this actually, I just ran into a victim that was abused, was in the system. He is a man right now. I just happened to come into contact with him, and one of the things he said is just what she said. Those kids get scared. They are not allowed. I know when I had my case, I was not allowed to tell my child, I want you. I'm fighting for you. You could not do that. So that the child gets this sense of, they don't want me. And then you have, I hear a little bit of the pitting of the family, even though it's her brother. It happens with whatever family. If they place them with family, whether it be a parent or a family, grandma, aunt, uncle, CPS, DSC, alphabet agents pit them against each other. So they're being told things about her, I'm sure, that are just horrific. And so, of course, her brother is going to get this. And then the fact that she can't have kids. They put them in a position in adoptive families all the time where the mother and father can't have children. So what would they do? Take yours.
Can I also say something? So when I had custody of my son, there was this lady that watched my son before CPS removed him. I love this lady. She treated my kid just the same way I would treat my kid. Well, it turns out during the case, just right after, because at first they placed my son in foster care until my brother passed all this stuff, right? So after they passed him, my brother went to the CPS office with my son. It turns out that woman that took care of my son, she went into the CPS office here in San Antonio unexpectedly, didn't thinking that she was gonna bump into my brother who had my son at the time. And she questioned my brother what they were here for, and their response was, oh, we're here to foster to adopt him.
Okay. We have a unique situation going on here, and it's more common among married couples, but you're having this with your brother. It is called parental alienation, and there are some good people in Texas that are skilled at this. Now, it's a very counterintuitive phenomenon, and psychologists will say, oh, it's an aberrant psychopathology. It's not. It's actually far more simple than that. It is a naturally occurring defense mechanism that the child executes when nobody else either is able to or willing to rescue them from the toxic stress. Toxic stress to children is really neurotoxic. It affects the brain negatively. And it will actually shrink areas rich in glucocorticoid receptors and cause behavior changes. There are three characteristics. There's the shared delusion that the captor parent is the good parent, and that the less abusive parent or the less empathy impaired parent is a bad parent. So So you've got the shared delusion. And there's cognitive dissonance that the child has for both of those, that the child feels very uncomfortable with. That's stressful to the child. The child is facing the ambiguous loss of not one, but two people in their lives. A parent that has the emotional ability to bond with them, that's physically not in their lives, and the parent that's physically in their lives, but doesn't have the ability to bond with them in a healthy way. And then you have the covert domestic violence by proxy of the child, where the child is being used through parental gatekeeping. It's emotionally and psychologically abusive. And the only thing the child can do to self-rescue is to resolve the cognitive dissonance so that the captor parent is seen as the good parent and the target parent is seen as the bad parent. That reduces their stress level. When they start treating the good parent like garbage with narcissistic defense mechanisms, then you have a situation where, okay, now they've eliminated 3 out of 5 of the components of stress in their lives, but they've cut off the relationship with that parent. Now, Dr. Childress has done some fantastic work within psychology and has trained people in Texas. Those are people to look for. Dr. Warshak, also in Texas, he has done some exceptional work. And that's something.
Can I say something? So in my visits with my son, yes, there is that relationship barrier between me and my brother. I just leave it between my brother. I don't bring it in with my visits with my son. I'm there to see him, and every time I see him, I say, "Hey, son, I love you. I miss you. I wish you can come home." Yada yada, and I tell him every single time that I miss him, and I've never canceled on my visits with my son, and I'm not.
But the thing here is, though, when we're talking about parental alienation, seeing the tactics here are the people with custody badmouth the parents, parents, whether it's
It's a form of parental gatekeeping.
They bring up some sort of past or just their personal beef into the situation. Or, because I know I've had my situations where it's like, visiting an aunt or uncle, and it's like, oh, they let me stay up past a certain time, and I'm allowed to have Coca-Cola, and I'm allowed to do this, I'm allowed to do that. And I'm dreading having to go back home with my parents. So that is the sort of situation that we're dealing with.
And that happens all the time. Absolutely, that happens. It's more it's just like your domestic violence. It's a mental, emotional alienation. It does not have to be physical. These children, the abuse that's happening to our children through this system is not so much physical as how much mental. The minute they took them, the minute they're in a case, that mental attack starts happening on those children. They are in the middle and nobody is looking at them. That's why we have this issue, is nobody's taking their mental and the damage that it's doing and putting that focus on that. It's not happening. That's sad.
I totally agree with what y'all are saying on that, because let me explain you the situation. So, like I said before, I was in foster care. My brother was in foster care also. So this is how I feel, and you could correct me if I'm wrong on it. But my brother feels like CPS saved him. So what he's going to do is he's going to say, you know what, she's a bad mom, and he's going to start bad mouthing me. And he does that. He did that to our biological mother. I know my biological mother now. I've tried to have a relationship with her, but with what she's going on and what I'm going on, it's too much for me to handle, because she has her mental health issues, and so do I. And so I'm not on any medication, but what I'm trying to do is, I've never been on medication since CPS told me to be on medication. I had a psychiatric done. They felt like I didn't need the medications, but my psychological is the one that came out bad. So what's going on is, when I feel like there's too much I can't handle, I'm going to cut somebody off. because I got to focus on me and my 2 children. And that's what I did. And my mom to this very day does not understand that. So I have my kids I have to worry about.
Erica, when you said your psychological came back bad, do you mind sharing with us what you mean by that?
Well, okay, so CPS is, okay, you know how when it's court order for us to go do it because of CPS? Well, I went and did my psychological done. It turns out, I don't know if it's a possibility because when I did it, I could have been pregnant, but very early on. I don't know if that's takes a role on it or a toll on it or not, but they made me look bad, like I was unfit to take care of my oldest.
Who picked
That's not
the
uncommon.
psychologist?
Huh?
Who picked the forensic psychologist?
CPS.
CPS. Yeah, CPS. They won't accept outside. When I advocate, we try, and I actually have a huge case where the guy got all his own stuff. I tell people, get your own psych eval, get your own drug testing when they do this. Get an independent outside. And I don't know how many cases they will not accept it. If it is not one of their contracted, because again, here we are, money, money, money. That's it. That's all they care about. They don't care what that report says. So what happens? Those people are working for CPS. Of course, it's going to come out in their favor.
What needs to happen in court is those forensic psychological evaluations need to be challenged for Rule 702, the reliability of evidence under Daubert, because there is so much bias as a function of the money flowing through that system that they're invalid.
My
I'm
question.
sure if I looked at them more in depth, I'd find more problems with them.
My question is this. I know that there's a mental health act of 19-something, 80, isn't it 83, mental health act? Aren't they technically not supposed to use that kind of act against somebody?
Okay, it don't matter. You're exactly right. ADA advocates are not even recognized. Every single time I have a mental health case, I say, where's their ADA advocate? Well, nobody's there. They do not follow that. Here's the thing. It don't matter what the law and the guidelines are because they're not following them, even if we have them.
Right.
And I'm sorry to say that because here's the thing. People don't get help. They want these parents, these families to take care of the kids, be mentally stable, right? But then they do this to them. And then who wants to go and tell truth? Nobody tells the truth in therapy anymore, especially if it's with CPS. That's what you're there for. But you can't because you have to watch what you say because it goes right back to them and they twist it. I say that we have Facebook, trolls that have a game of Twister. So does CPS. They twist everything.
Well, the thing is, though, I have to look at this realistically, and the audience has to look at this realistically. I don't know the numbers on this exactly, but I do know the majority of the people who have to deal with CPS and take their psych evaluations are proven to be mentally deficient in some way or form in which the courts will try to use to take advantage. Now, if the majority of the population is mentally deficient, then doesn't that create the new norm?
There you go.
Does that mean they're normal?
You think so, V? That's a good point.
Yeah.
What is the normal? I sat in this seminar today and it said something about the laws of guns. Reasonable, deadly force, reasonable. But who determines reasonable? Same thing. Who determines what mentally normal, stable? I mean, it's such a wide range.
My question is this, though, too. Okay, if my psychological came back out bad, why can't they relook at this thing? Because what it comes back down to me being in foster care. How do I not know that my mental placement is affected because of me being in foster care? Because I know that there are children who are getting molested, abused in foster care. That's why, Jamie Johnson, I kid you not, when I saw that story about Michael Cadena's daughter, I was pedoed. That group home that she mentioned about her being abused, I kid you not.
You know how many take care? I myself take cases like that. I'm sure James, I'm sure V deals with this. It's not abnormal. And what's happening again is this little girl, like you're talking about, she's screaming, even going on mainstream media, I've been molested, abused in the system, save me. And then nobody has done anything. She was 9 years old. She's 12 now. You're right. It's
And as somebody who was in the foster care system,
we've seen it.
I feel for this girl. I really do. If there was something that I could do, if I would have never had a CPS case in my life, I would have taken her in and I would have said, hey, look, Adriana.
And that's not the there's so many people that will take these kids in and they're not given a chance because it doesn't fit their narrative. So I understand that completely.
Well,
but you got your hands full with your case, unfortunately.
From everything that I know with what goes on with CPS now, if I didn't have, like I said, if I could go back and I didn't have a case, I would talk to Michael and say, hey, look, Michael, I'm willing to take your daughter in, but this is going to be my terms just because I'm taking in your daughter. I would allow you to have that relationship because I care and I feel for the parents and the child. The system is so corrupted.
Well, we are coming to the end of the show, and all right. So I want to ask very quickly, Mr. Kelly. Now, a hypothetical situation, and I think this is something that we should do and we should push as a people, and have independent organizations that do this thing. I had an idea. If mental stability is such an issue, mental health with the parenting scheme, then it also should be the same with the courts and the establishment. We should have psychological audits, like shoppers. Talk to random judges, talk to random CPS workers, and just have surprise psych evaluations on these people. What do you think about that?
I love it. You know what? No, let me tell you something. The caseworkers, number one, they're not trained or anything, but they all have. Most of them aren't even mentally old enough to handle it. And I've had them so much as a caseworker go to get her card and a needle fall on the ground. I've had caseworkers that are arrested for domestic violence. Come on now, where's theirs? Where's their accountability? Are they having mental health? Right? We should make them.
But I also, this is another thing I feel, regardless of placement, whether it's foster care, adoption, anything, I feel like the opposite party, not just the parents, but the opposite party, they should have a psychological done too, not just the parent.
Oh, like the foster parents and stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we have so many problems in the foster system.
That would be under Federal Rules of Civil Procedure Rule 35, and that needs to be enforced. See, one of the biggest problems with this whole mess is that we, the people, have become ignorant of our rights and apathetic about enforcing them. And when we start understanding what our rights are, understanding what the law is, then we can turn around and enforce them.
You know, and that's in the details.
Well, again, we're coming down to the end of the show. Do you have some legal advice for Ms. Thomas's case as of right now?
Her case is challenging not only in a legal perspective, but in a psychological perspective, when there are so many people that like to misinterpret what they're seeing for profit in the system. So the best thing I can do is psychologically, she needs to find somebody that understands the term identification with the aggressor. If you say parental alienation in the courtroom, it's going to be a hot button topic. Identification with the aggressor takes it off of that hot button topic. And you need to work to get full custody. If you need to get an attorney to do that, and I would suggest it, do so. But you should have full custody. You're not a clear and present danger to the child.
Correct. You have another child sitting right there next to you. Am I correct? You have full custody of that child?
I actually have joint custody with his dad. His dad's actually involved, but I have him 24/7, 7 days a week.
You care for that child, and yet you can't care for another one, and that also is something they do all the time. They have a 2-year-old, and then they'll go take the newborn. They'll have the older kids out and give them a 2-year-old. Do it all.
Well, that's all the time we have for the show today.
Yeah.
I want to thank my co-host, Jamie Starr Johnson, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And James Kelly,
Thank you.
you're an awesome guy. I
Yes.
thank you for your legal perspective. And our guest,
Thank you.
Thomas, I really wish the best for you. And if you have updates and needing more advice, we'll rotate different legal advisors